Morning, happy Saturday. We are in the Tri-Bog area today, and anytime I've done this, there's like a plane flying overhead. Anyway, it's 10:25. We're gonna do some overlanding into the interior of this area, have a look around as we're getting to the point where there is the potential for migratory signs of life. And we'll see what we find or don't find, and we will take things from there. Next week, I will be in Vermont. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and during that time, we'll cover some ground there and see where things turn up there. And I'm ignoring the plane. Let's hit it. Let's see what we find, and I'll see where I am with things of commentary, and we'll go from there. All right, let's hit it. At a familiar spot. I like to start out here to listen in, because bog number one of the Tri-Bog area is an area where you have a little open space where things resonate. You can hear out a ways. See if there's anything going on. In the winter, this is where I've heard some audio phenomenon before. A former Nezra member was trying to tell me last year that it was the ice. And what I heard last year, I am willing to consider that a possibility. The year before that, it was not the same sound. It sounded literally like some kind of feedback from a subwoofer or something. And I'm sorry, ice does not make that kind of a sound. So, partial credit to Tom, but it doesn't account for the whole thing. No offense to him personally if he feels strongly about it. I got to remember to put some trail cams out here, because I've never seen actual wildlife out here, but there are signs of all of it everywhere. So to get a better read on this area, like 24/7, you got to get some trail cams out here. Just not right now, because we're in the middle of hunting season, and there are a fair amount of hunters that come through here. And you want to trust people not to take your stuff, but you can't. So, enough said there. Excuse me, I have the end bits of a cold, so I might be noisier in terms of nonverbal cues than I care to be. As I said in the beginning, next week I'll be in Vermont for 3 days, doing some field work up there, and we'll see how that turns out. I'll be based up there too, so I can actually cover more ground over a 3-day period. I'm down here today mainly because we're towards the end of the fall colors down here, and I have the hunting season up there in Vermont, you're at the point now where they have what I call the Yellow Bean Gang, the hunters from Massachusetts, who, no offense to you, a lot of those guys are an accident waiting to happen, and I don't have to be around them. So it is what it is. I just assume avoid them. Community news. I do have a peeve, and this is something I saw a guy doing, and I hope it's not a trend in the making. It's something that the hoaxer Steve Isdall, or I don't know if he's really a hoaxer. He's more of like a scam artist, or a what's the right word? He's full of it anyway. He's basically reading other people's emails in front of a green screen that's made to look like outdoorsy stuff, while he's standing there in outdoorsman gear looking outdoorsy and macho, but it's a green screen. So sorry, not sorry. That's not really, I don't know, just kind of cheesy. And I noticed that the last few videos that the Mountain Beast Mysteries guy, he's kind of taken up this trend too, where he's, if you look really, really close at the outline from the background to himself, you can tell it's a green screen. If you look closely enough, it's not hard to tell. And the guy, it's not that you have an obligation to go out into the elements like this, and it is a little bit cooler today. It's not freezing, but it's not. Probably the first day I've been out here that it's like in the mid 40s, so it's not freezing, but I think it's not balmy either. So you're out in the sun, it's warm enough. You're out in the sun, it's warm enough. But we're definitely moving into November. We're in the nutmeg state. It gets a little chillier. It's probably already like this up in Vermont already, but down here it's starting to roll in. Last of the leaves. And the other telltale sign of fall moving into the colder portion of it, I heard this morning the Canadian geese flying south and are doing their seasonal migration. So that's the other indicator down here. The Connecticut leg of their migratory journey is kind of ramping up and they're heading out. So seasons are changing. So that being the case, we'll have to just like change our attire to match that. It does kind of mean also that the bugs can kind of like piss off until next April or so anyway, which is never a bad thing. Seasonal change isn't always all bad. A little colder, but you can dress for cold. That's fine. I'll say it again. This area is good for weird, gnarly ass trees that are kind of unique to this region. And you don't see a lot of this in Vermont. The weird, gnarly ass trees that are almost give you like a haunted forest feel. But as far as news in the community, the green screen thing is probably my peeve of the week. Just a green screen just comes across as lazy. I mean, you might as well just sit out on your back porch and give your thoughts on Bigfoot stuff as you're sipping coffee to the sun setting or something. But it's just, get off your ass and get out of the house. Let's make an effort. But, that being said, this time of year, if they're out in northern Canada and you've already got 3 feet of snow on the ground, that might be harder to do too. I don't know where in Canada. I think he's a Canadian, the Mountain Mysteries guy is. If he's far enough north, though, it might be easier said than done. But it still comes across as lazy. Isdal does it all year round, and it cheapens for the people that swear up and down about him. Sorry, not sorry. He's full of it. He kind of put his coattails on the wagon train of Melba Ketchum at one point, along with Scott Carpenter and Dave Paulides, who's selling books that are basically trying to twist missing persons cases from the region and all around and add a layer of paranormal, but he twists the facts to do it. I've mentioned in previous videos, there's one case out of Vermont in the Bennington Triangle where a college girl went missing, never to be found, and he tries to twist it. She was heard to scream from a swamp thing. That version is the only version of the story where that comes up, and the only version's in his book. No one else is resonating. All the other stories and records historically point to either A, she just was kind of foolish and didn't dress for the weather and paid the price, unfortunately, by way of exposure, or her last ride was with a guy who had some domestic violence issues with his wife, and unfortunately the missus wasn't there and the girl was, and she paid the price for his rage issues and was murdered potentially. Today, unlike other days, I did remember bug spray because the deer kids are about. And hopefully that'll help them to leave me alone as well. Because for those that don't know, a deer kid kind of looks like a flying tick. It has the same habits as one as well. And it's a Chinese invasive insect. Seems like all invasive, shitty little neighbors come from China these days. And fuck China if they don't like my saying so. I just suddenly remember a news story from the UK where you had some Chinese tourists and they were trying to say that you're not allowed to take their picture in public because Chinese law doesn't allow it. It's like, and the Brits are kind of like, you know, fuck you, bitch. You're not in China right now, so suck it up. You're in public, you have no right to privacy. At least that's the way it works in America. They try that shit over here. Well, in the present political climate, they might get a visit from ICE and be shown the way home after an unpleasant stay in jail. That seems to be the modus operandi of America's growing Gestapo. As you can see, no, I am not a fan of ICE, and I don't have to be, and if you are, well, that's on you. Anyway, politics over. We're not doing that today. On a more social commentary note, it seems like in the last week I have, even this morning coming up here, developed a talent for encountering a little creature, a cryptid in the wild, known as the Karen. And both times it was behind the wheel, and they are every bit as annoying as the YouTube legend that has grown about them in other forms too has made them out to be. They are, and the one I ran into a couple of days ago was like right down to the classic haircut they allegedly have. And that one was lucky she retreated because she got me grumpy enough to possibly get arrested at her expense. She was that obnoxious. So, to the Karens of the world. One, you're not in charge. And two, shut the fuck up, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich and get over yourself. Sorry if that's misogynistic, but again, I don't care. It's a Karen. Karens are not women. Karens are Karens. Karens are not women. Karens are Karens. And they need some attitude adjustments because the entitlement runs a little thick with them. Anyway, I again apologize for the cough. It's going to be there. I'm actually surprised there aren't any hunters out because we're moving into that time of year they're out a little more prevalent, a little more prevalent, and they're gunning for Bambi. Of course, I came over here because the other trail had about a mile from here. You had all pickup trucks, and those are usually hunters. A little too many for me to feel like being out there with people. Most of the Connecticut hunters I've run into, as I've mentioned in the past, are not the same walking accident waiting to happen that a lot of your mass hunters seem to be. But still, if you can avoid the possibility, then it is what it is. Trying to think of anything else Bigfoot related going on, and I can't think of anything really at the moment. So I'm going to cover some ground and take a segment break while I ponder that very subject, and we'll take things from there. Oh, the one thing before I do that, just to revisit, Culls had mentioned the interest in doing like an internet TV show, but like self-produced, not sorry, the normal schlock that you get out of Hollywood, the Expedition Bigfoot bullshit, or God forbid Mountain Monsters. But no, people doing field stuff the way that they do field stuff And it's probably not going to be for everyone, but Hollywood's never going to give you that because that's not where the ratings go, and that's their motivation. Like I said last time. So my plan is we're going to jump the stream and head in over there, go in a ways, and see what's going on in there. Last time I was there was a very high-end trail cam sitting there plain as day by a very trusting person leaving it where it was. And either that or they have a tracking device on it, but I'm going to, as yet other planes flying overhead, I'm going to take a segment break and cover a little ground, and we'll be back in a bit, of course. We are back. We are on the other side of the stream. Things get a little thicker in this area, like these small pines. Second generation growth. And I just killed my first deer kid. I put bug spray on, but he was on my fleece, and much to my great satisfaction, there's another little shit too. Let me show you what these things are. Get off me, you little turd. He fell to the ground. But at least I'm wearing enough. That's what I mean. Even when it's like cold like this, you cover bug spray on the parts of exposed skin, and with a fleece or something, you can't really get in. Not that they're not trying, though. Little shits. I'll have to check my fleece before I go inside, though. But the bitch of the deer kid versus ticks are ticks usually can't get on you unless you provide a vector from like your knees or your mid-thighs down. Whereas deer kids fly, needless to say. And I'll have to keep an eye out throughout the day. It kind of really does take the enjoyment out of a hike when you have to deal with those little shitheads. But anyway, so Coles was talking about doing a self-produced internet TV series, and that's an interesting idea. I think everyone who does a lot of time in the field has had that thought once or twice in their life. Limited only by the amount of time you can put into it or that kind of thing. I try to do like a vlog style these days because you're out there in real time. And were I to have a sighting in here, with any luck, you're there too. So kind of that like live from the field thing. There was a guy, there's like a Texan dude. I don't know if he's still out there. I haven't seen him on Facebook in a while. Hope all's well with the boy, but that was kind of his shtick, was go out into the field live with the camera and see what we find. Kind of like the Colorado guy who was like, Project Go and See, or something like that. Grab a camera, go look for yourself, see what you find. He won Richter's Bullshitter of the Year award, whatever Richter called that. I do miss that show too. He had a good sense of humor, that guy, and he was never going to run out of material with what he was doing, because the one unfortunate thing about Bigfooting, you have no shortage of bullshit artists. You really don't. There's no shortage of those guys. And, and for everybody out there on Facebook who, these are the ones who are like, you have to respect everybody. No, I don't. I've been doing this since 2003, as much as I hate people saying I've done this for so long, but I have. And if you allow me that hypocrite's moment, if you're spewing obvious delusion and you're adding to the white noise, it's going to be one of those videos, I guess. You're in the way of advancing the subject to where we have a solution to it. And I know some people want to milk the mystery forever, and all the power to you, but Not everybody feels that way. And I prefer a solution to it. And if I'm the one that finds the solution and it doesn't go along with your reality, too fucking bad. Until it's proven otherwise, and there's not a Wooster out there among us who is going to prove that has happened to date. It is a corporeal, flesh and blood, tangible thing that needs to eat, needs to sleep, needs to fuck to procreate the species, and needs to freaking drink and sleep. And all the things a large mammal of a simian nature is going to need to do. And that makes traceable patterns. Which is why I follow water sources, because if it's alive and it's a freaking mammal, it needs to freaking drink to not drop dead of dehydration. And if there's another element to it, and I will admit in a couple of weird circumstances I've seen some weird shit related to the creature, as I have seen them. But I hate to tell the woo crowd. What I've seen is flesh and blood. It's a tangible thing. It's not a man, it ain't a bear. What it is, well, that's a legitimate question I don't have an answer to as of this point in time. But I suddenly realized I don't really have a plan here. I'm just kind of walking back into this stuff. My patience for deer kids will be a deciding factor. So far there's been 2. They land on my fleece, which means they're not, but I put bug spray on, so with any luck. Unlike black flies, they respect the beat. To those who are more hippie-like and they like the more natural stuff, that's okay. I'm not convinced that your stuff works. My stuff is based on DEET, and DEET's based on science, and most annoying insects don't like DEET, so notably skeeters and the like. So we go this way, that way goes into a big patch of mountain laurel. Good sneaky spot for a big monkey if he wants to spy on you. I know they're not monkeys, shut the fuck up. I facetiously use that term, and I do have a nature to be a smartass, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like smartasses, and this is where Karens come to play, and I have, like I said, encountered a few of them. And if I run into the one at the grocery store again, what happened, just because I'm kind of processing more Bigfoot related thoughts. I'm trying to articulate how I'd go about a self-produced show. The Karen was trying to sneak between spaces to come out the other side so she didn't have to go all the way around. And I had the right of way, and she effectively cut me off. And when I blocked her by, driving the right way down the straight alley between the cars in the parking lot, she threw up her hands and started swearing up a storm and not being very cordial about the whole thing. And caught me in a moment of enough annoyance where I basically moved ahead and blocked her in and basically gave her no choice but to retreat. And to that, you foul-mouthed little lady, you're welcome, because I think you kind of needed the clarity of that, to let it be known that no, some people are not going to put up with your shit. And because you're a woman does not entitle you to act all rude and uncouth to other drivers. Again, I'm not going to get all political and go into a mocking of the woke, but they do need mocking, though. But that's not why we're here today. So back to self-produced TV series. I think the best approach, at least from my standpoint, would be effectively to do just like a live action, what you do normally for like an overnight operation go out, put out the cameras, show people how to do it, listening devices, other tricks you might have. Occasionally I use cameras, I use recording devices like H2s and the like. I also have a drone for overhead. Not so much with the hope that you're going to get Bigfoot real time in here, flying a drone in here, because that's not going to work, obviously, but you can fly it over a stretch of territory that you haven't gotten into yet, map out terrain, get a more personalized real-time version than Google Maps is going to give you a lot of times, things like that. And that kind of thing. But and then when you get into the winter and more of the audio stuff, there are infrasound measurement and detectors. There's EMF and EF readers, which are semi-relevant to Bigfoot in some ways, potentially. Do I want to go up there and kind of go to the back side of the... Let's do that. Go to the back side of the wetland, because that way we kind of have an atlas of how to proceed to backtrack when we go back. But minus the deadfall, this would be good for stealth for something big, because the pine needles make everything nice and soft. Let's go this way. All outward signs of activity, though, with the amount of bird-related noise in the background, kind of points against today. It's when things get weirdly quiet. That's when you perk up more. I hear enough birds in the distance that that's probably not the case. Anywho, I am going to take a segment break as I ponder if I'm going to go that way or down in there. I may go down in there. I don't think I've been down in that before. But I'm going to take a segment break and we'll be back in a bit. We're back. The wind has kicked up a little bit, which in this temperature is a little chilly, admittedly. Let's go down in here and see what we got. If it gets all crazy thick, I'm not going to get turned around in here, though. Having gotten lost in local woods before, I'm not going to get all cocky, because it has happened, so it obviously can happen. But that being said, you also have one of those old stone walls, which is a good cheat, because that one goes up there and connects to one that goes down the hill over there. So that's an old school Connecticut cheat. Maybe in Massachusetts too. I haven't seen as many in Vermont, though. Different methods for different regions, I guess. Fucking deer kids. Yeah, it's getting thick. Thicker anyway. I'll advance up and get... The thing is, what I do know about this area, despite it getting all thick up in here, is the second pond is down there. You can see where the clearing is over there, so you can cut back over that way. You're not too far in. Mushrooms. And you also have the wetland over there, so I can position basically where I am. And if you go further that way straight, there's a series of hiking trails I've been in relatively recently. Which reminds me, there's a section of that I haven't gotten into, and I do want to see where that pops out. That's going to be some homework for November, I think. Alright, so that kind of goes along the ridge there. Looks like there's a connector over there, I think. Maybe. Yeah, so, but it goes further that way, which I'm not going to delve too far into. The terrain doesn't seem to get any different. It seems like you're going to be... Interesting thing is, if I had my drone on me, wonder if you could sneak it up through here and get a look at where you are from there. That's tricky when the trees are this thick, though. So it's just too easy to clip a branch and take your drone out, or tree it, which is even more fun out here, because then you got to remember where the hell it is. Although the app that DJI has for Find My Drone is actually pretty good. I have had to use it in the past. And it got me to the point where I almost stepped on the drone. So that's not... It's not good to step on the drone, but it tells you how accurate it was, and that's not a bad thing. Just pop a look in here. And this isn't my first time out this far. I actually have been out. If you go down that way, there is another wetland, a small one. If you go over like 3 or 4 hills over that way. But I don't really have any compelling reason to go over there today. I'm kind of just bopping around looking for signs of life in an area where you don't get a lot. I mean, hunters usually are like along the wetland, which makes me think they're duck hunters. They could be deer hunters too, but it's probably worth mentioning that big expensive trail cam months later is not there. Not totally surprising, because they if you leave it out long enough, it ain't going to be there, because somebody's going to take it. It was not somebody who has a few of my own. You know the good ones, you know the cheap ones. This was not a cheap one. This was one that had a SIM card and had the ability to call home, and you have somebody watching that on their computer back home by way of cellular connection, which is a kind of a cool thing. I have one. I have not used that capacity, because most of the places where I would have had it, the odds of having a consistent signal to the cell tower is probably problematic, given the remote area. Some areas you're just not going to get a signal. That's the one self-defeating factor in that kind of a device. And I'm going to bop up over the hill here real quick. See what nature of... Probably this is like, you're just kind of following the contour of that. the connector wall. Kind of, there's like a little corner there and goes there. I've been through here before. Not often, but once or twice I have. And kind of bops up along the back of the wetland. And somewhere in here, at least a couple of years ago, there was a pair of hunters that had a little hidey hole in here where they stashed their deer stand goodies, thinking they probably didn't have anyone knowing where their stuff was. It's a big old root ball right there. But unfortunately, gentlemen, I did. Is this actually it, or is that... This is interesting. Not so much this, but piled up pine cones. 3 piles of piled up pine cones. Interesting. Can't rule out human, but this is not random. This shit is piled up. I'm going to take some pictures, and it's like there too. So this is an interesting find. Interesting. I'm going to take a segment break. Let me just kind of do a visual record with the camera, and then I'm going to switch out the other camera for some stills. You know, we'll record some of this. Just when you think when you're ready to say there's nothing going on, you find weird shit like this. So what I'm going to do when I'm done doing that I look out there a ways, but I'm going to follow the thing down the hill and see if there's more. But for now, I'm going to take a segment break while I record this. So we're going to work our way along here for a bit and look for a repetition, because that is not naturally occurring. That's somebody went to the time and effort to pile those up to that degree. Could be people being odd, but maybe it's a hunter's idea of a bait pile. But looking further up the hill and looking down here, I'm not seeing a repetition per se. It's worth documenting though. That's like random deadfall, but let's go a little bit further and see if there's any more repetition along the wall. If not, we'll start angling back down that way. Walk around this tree and have a look. We're not too lost because we're still adjacent to the water, to the wetland down there. We're kind of like behind it now. But every time I think I get bored with this area, there's some weird shit you find in here. So I keep coming back. So yeah, I'm not seeing any more. That was a weird find though. We're going to go that far and then go down that way. Just to cover a span of... I'm just trying to think of any animal that would be like attracted to pine cones like that are going to be... that it would be like a bait pile or something. If not, it's just a weird... kind of a weird find. Looking down the hill, the gradient of the hill, I don't see any repetition. So we're going to start making our way back. I'm not going to walk under the log. We'll walk around it and make our way slowly back at an angle. But that was interesting. Is there evidence of it being Bigfoot related? No. Not per se, but it is something weird enough to make you wonder what was that and why would somebody do that? If you're talking about people. Because like I said, I don't think that was a random falling pattern. Because if you look the way they are now, they're just kind of, there are a fair amount of them, but they're just kind of scattered all over. An interesting fun fact about pine cones. If you really want to scrape the living crap out of your colon, they are edible. They have absolutely zero nutritional value. So they would literally be empty, painful calories, but unlike some forest mushrooms, if you ate pine cones, other than internal injuries from the very scaly nature of them, they're not going to kill you, per se. Per se. But also noting that the pine needles are hiding some features in the ground, so I kind of have to, in some places, kind of tentatively put my foot down to make sure I'm not going into a hole or something. That's how you fuck up your knee and your ankle and such. Gonna kind of move back down to the center of this where it opens up a little bit more. But I don't know if this is what Culls has in mind as a like TV series kind of thing, but it's like a vlog style thing too is kind of valuable, I think. as I'm tromping through here, you're seeing what I see. If I did this according to a different kind of style of doing this, I expect it would be harder to relate the context of like that pine cone pile, because like, yeah, they're like, how do we know you didn't do that? And that's a fair question. That's why I take you along for the ride as I kind of bop through here and can kind of back up the evidence that I kind of happened upon that randomly. And we're sort of adjacent to a portion of, I'm not totally familiar with this stretch, but by the same token, it's because the ferny stuff breaks up the contour, but you're on a reasonably familiar corner of the wetland. Otherwise, this might be more deceptive. But the one thing that wasn't here, I don't think that was here last year. That down tree. But kind of walked myself into a corner until I get through that stuff. I don't know if that kind of, the thicker cover kind of gives you more cover from deer kids, or if that's where they lurk. Guess we'll find out. But as to those wondering if we're lost, no, we're just, with the seasons change, this place changes appearances a lot, so you kind of have to, that's why you spend time in one area a lot of the times, because then you can read the patterns better than if you walk through once. So one thing Nezra always did that made no sense, they were out twice a year. They'd go to the same 4 spots, but they go to the same 4 spots in no particular logical order. And several of the newer members would ask why. It was always an awkward question because you don't really have a good answer. You don't really have a good answer because you fucking go where the activity is. Not where certain selfish members, and we're getting into some pettiness now, want to go because for whatever reason, oh, well, that's its turn in the rotation. Last time we were at the other area, we had activity. Does this place have activity? Well, we don't know. Then why the fuck are we going there randomly? You follow up on the active areas. That's methodology. That's strategy. That kind of thing. You go where the information puts you. But they wouldn't do that. Which is a large part of why, despite disputed versions of why I'm no longer with them, because you can only lend so much in the way of a gentle nudge towards what you think to be a evolutionary step towards, as in watch what you step there, towards better methodology as you learn more. If you just keep doing the same old, and you never get any results, one could argue that's kind of the definition of insanity. And that's kind of also backed up by the fact a lot of people in the mainstream would think just going out here to do this is sort of in the same direction, admittedly. But so for those who aren't realizing, the stream is right there. I'm trying to find the same spot I came in on because it's easier to jump there. But even if I walked it all the way over to where the pond is, here on the other side, you walk that, you'll hook up to a walking trail, or not a walking trail, a hiking trail kind of thing. So risk of getting lost in here at this point is kind of so-so. You'd have to really not be paying attention to get turned around enough, I think. But just trying to articulate where. Let's get up to the stream, and then we'll have an easier time finding the spot I want. If I can do it without going through all this charming deadfall. I mean, you can literally hear the stream. It's right there. Not everything is visual out here. Usually it is. But now I know exactly where I am because there's an old telltale set of tracks from an ATV that came through here when God only knows, but we're back. Did a little bop around here. What I'm going to do is another segment break, and we're going to hop a stream, cover some ground, and see what's going on in another stretch of this area. See what's going on over by the boat launch, perhaps. Can I jump here, or... Because I know I can jump over there. I'm going to go over there, but... Let me pop out over here and have a scenic look anyway. This is a frustrating wetland too, because it's like not consistently walkable, I guess is the best way to put it. It tall grass, wet spots, swampy as all get out. So anyway, get off me. Fucking deer kid. I'm gonna take a segment break to deal with somebody trying to land on me. We'll be back in a bit. I think we're about as far into this episode as we're gonna get. I know it's not a TV series, but that's just the lingo I chose to use in that moment. So comment on that if you want. So you know where this is. Like, subscribe, send. Leave comments to the effect that you feel moved to do. Positive, negative, somewhere in the middle, suggestions, that kind of thing. And we'll go from there. Until next time, bye.